Family, 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 family. Assets over liability. Assets over liability. Assets something put money into your pocket, liability something take money out of your pocket. Dave, billionaire baby,
ISIS on fire.
and billionaire Sunday. We're building bridges, not walls.
Building bridges, not walls. That's a good visual. What is the difference between a bridge and a wall?
Well, bridge. I would say like a bridge is more like an ally. You know, when you're building bridges, you want to be able to make allies. You want to be able to network. You want to be able to negotiate deals. You know, because you want to be able to actually make bridges. And walls is something that isolates you. You build a wall, and you're cutting off communication. You're not able to network.
Right? Because when I visualize a wall, I visualize something, just concrete from the ground up,
Right.
where a bridge is something that passes over.
Exactly, exactly. And that's what we want to be able. See, one thing about a bridge, you can cross over and come back, and cross over and come back. You build a wall, you can't get through. A bridge builds communication. Once you build in a bridge, it's like you're building communication. You're able to negotiate deals with different people. If you're networking, you're able to be able to negotiate with different people. If you're in business, you want to be able to build bridges. If you're whatever services that you're dealing with, you never want to build walls. You ever seen a kid who built walls and he was in isolation, he was lonely. And if you was the kid that built bridges, then you was the kid who had, you know, a lot of friends. So now in the business world, what we try to do is we call it networking. You know, building bridges is like networking and building allies. If you was the president, of the United States of America, you would want many allies, right? Because you don't want enemies. You know, not saying that's what America doing, though. Because they got a whole lot of enemies.
They got a whole lot of
Yeah, they got a lot of enemies. They got a lot of
enemies. But they got allies.
Yeah, they got some allies. They got some powerful enemies.
But when you're networking, go back to the networking.
Right.
You're doing it the way you're supposed to be doing it,
right,
without
right,
the allies.
Right.
Networking also is a form of relation without the ship.
Right. I mean, yeah. Relations. Yeah, you build a relation. You build, one thing about um relationship, yeah, it can be a relationship, because if you're going from having a business meeting, we have a relationship, We have men, whoever, we're going, we're trying to negotiate. You want to have a relationship with people who you're negotiating deals with. That makes it more better, and
because then they have, you know, your best interest in it too.
well, hopefully, hopefully, but when business comes, when a lot of times when people are doing business, everybody have their own interests, and there's nothing wrong with having your own interest, because a guy is more than likely not gonna do business with you if there's nothing for him to benefit out of it. A company is not gonna do business with you if you don't bring any type of value. A person's not gonna really do business. If you're negotiating and you don't bring any value to the table, then there's no reason for you to even go to the table, because the main reason why you're going to the table is because you can bring value. You have to be able to bring value.
Well, just like your logo says, assets over liabilities, I think in life we all have to. You're either an asset or a liability. There's really no gray area.
No, there's definitely no in the middle, right? You're either asset or liability. And in life, you want to be able to be an asset. You want to be of value in every situation that you're in. And the only way that you can be of value to someone that you can show them that you are of value to them, you have to build the bridge. Because if you build walls, it don't matter if you're of value to someone because they would never know.
Okay, so remind them what is like why is it not good to have walls, as you say?
Well, so if you build walls and like I said, if you was a kid and you built walls, then you would be in isolation. You would have no friends. If you had a business and you built walls, then who would be your customers? Who would be where you get your product from? You know, things of that matter. Because if you build walls, then there's no form of communication. You're in isolation. But if you build allies, then you can get, you know where you get your product from. Then you're dealing with your customers. You know, that's business, and you're dealing with other men or other women in that area with, and you know what you're doing. You know, you're building relations and relationships. You're building relationships, that is like, when you come to allies. But if you're not building relationships, then you're building walls. And if you're building walls, then you're in isolation.
Now, can a person blindly build walls and they not recognize it
Of
due
course.
to like their it's their way?
The characteristics of their
Yeah.
personality. Of course, you can build, and most people, that's how they do it. They don't intentionally do it. You know, most people, they build walls because they don't intentionally do it. They build walls because they think that they can do it on their own. Many people think that they can do it on our own, especially with our culture. They think that we think that we can do it on our own. You know, I remember Jay-Z saying we'd rather have 100% of nothing than 1% of something. You know, we'd rather have 100% of nothing that we 100% own than 1% of something. You know, something that's worth, maybe 100 billion, 200 billion, 100 million, whatever, and you have 1% of it, and that makes you okay. But you rather own 100% of nothing than 1% of something, and that was something that Jay Z had said.
But that's like in the scripture, it says one part in the numbers, and even just like a bridge and the architecture of the bridge, if there's many parts that create that bridge
Right, right.
formulated, and that shows you that you need that to build the masterpiece or the goal where you're trying to reach.
Well, the parts that you're saying of the bridge are the allies, and nobody can do it by themselves. You even have like Elon Musk. Elon Musk, he needs from a lot of his deals, his mega deals come from a lot of investors. A lot of his mega deals come from a lot of deals that he maybe made with the government. So even though he's the first trillionaire, but he didn't do it by himself. You have to have reaching arms. You have to have allies. You have to be able to communicate, because if you're not communicating with others, you can't do it by yourself. It's impossible.
And I have an example with business, as far as utilizing others, having a team.
Correct.
Like a lot of corporations and a lot of franchises, they use teams.
Correct.
When you go in their business, there's a host at the front,
Right.
or someone to answer the phone.
Right.
They have a marketing team.
Right.
But when you're a startup business, you're doing the marketing on your own. You're taking the customers. You're doing all of that. You're playing all the roles.
Right. You're putting on all the hats.
Yes, and that can get draining and exhausting. And then when you get into it, you'll see that is why franchises and corporations use that strategy. Because you can't do it all on your own. In your mind, you think you can. You're like, yeah, I can do all that on my own.
Well, sometimes you have to do it on your own for some point of time, but sometimes we get caught up until we continue to keep doing and doing, and you can't scale. You're not able to scale your business doing it all by yourself.
Right.
You have to be able to communicate. You have to be able to build allies. You have to be able to build a team. And if you don't build a team, you don't build allies. That's the thing. If you don't build allies, then you're not able to scale your business. Like I was saying about Elon Musk. He had investors. In order for SpaceX to go off, he had to have investors. For OpenAI, in order for OpenAI to go off, you have to have investors. You just can't do it all on your own. You have to be able to build a team. Yeah. So let's go into what about resources? The different, yeah, the different resources. Different, and if you don't have a bridge, if you don't build a bridge, if you don't have any form of communication, where are your resources going to come? Right? If you build a wall, right, where are your resources going to come from? Like I said earlier, Elon Musk, most of his resources come from the government and investors.
Back to the bridge, building bridges and not walls.
Correct.
A bridge you can fish off of.
Yes.
So that's the resource.
Yes.
Where a wall you can't. You can fish over
No.
a wall and
No, you got to break through. You got to break through the concrete. You got to break through the concrete in order to do the wall. You got to break through the concrete. See, what the thing about the walls is the wall isolates you. See, the bridge is what brings forth ally. The bridge is what gives you the resources because you're able to communicate with, like if you're the president, you're able to communicate with different countries. The resources that America has, like oil. You have the oil. You have over in China they have the steel. In different places we have different things.
So resources are necessities.
Resources are necessities to the universe. Necessities are most definitely for me and for you because if you don't have any resources, you're not able to get where you're trying to go. You know, there's nowhere in the world Elon Musk could be a trillionaire if he didn't have any resources. You know, you're not gonna be able to go where you want to go if you don't have any resources. And that's the reason why we have to build allies. So when you build a wall, and how do you build a wall? You build a wall through egos. When you have an ego, when you're thinking that you can do everything yourself,
sometimes it's a safety strategy.
Well, I mean, no risk, no reward. You know, I mean, you can play it safe all the way till you're 90 and you'll be the same, you'll be the same person all the way till you get there. You can play it safe, but no risk, no reward, and that's just the way it is. If you don't take any risk, you don't get no reward. If you play it safe, playing it safe will bring you forth a mediocre life.
I was thinking that in my head just now, like you can only get so far
by playing it safe, right? No risk, no reward. Not saying that you're going to be what they call it, like you're going to be suicidal or you're going to, go off on the deep end, but you have to take some form of risk and you have to be, you really, really, really have to believe in yourself. What I mean by that, sometimes you have to be delusional. Sometimes you have to speak to people and people think that you're insane. Like, who he think he is, and I know that things that I speak about and things that I talk about, and I talk so casually about it, and some people may feel that I am delusional because in order to be great, in order to bring the best out of you, you can't be mediocre. You have to have a vision and you have to have goals. And one thing about it, your goals, your vision, everybody's not going to see it. Your goals is not, my goals is not Isis goals. My vision is not Isis vision. I can get her to see my vision and if she'll reach, we can come on and we can build together.
Collaborate.
Yes, and that's how we build allies, right? But the average person is not going to see your vision, not going to see your goals, not going to see your dreams. If you take a kid We all remember this when we were young, you know. Um, let's go back to maybe elementary school, maybe like kindergarten, when everybody wanted to be a fireman, people wanted to be a doctor, wanted to
Everyone
be a
had the same
lawyer.
vision.
We had no, it wasn't the same vision because you might want to be a lawyer. I might have wanted to be a doctor. You know, our other friend might want to be a police officer. You know, we all wanted to be different things. I might have one homeboy who might want to be a lawyer like me. You know what I mean, or want to be a police. You know, or want to be a nurse. But as time goes on, right? Our visions and our dreams and our goals get weakened by our surroundings, our social cycle development and our environmental growth, how we're socialized. You know, our social cycle development creates an environment that seems to be hard to escape. It's like, how do we escape this socialization, this social cycle development?
Like
You know,
being burnt out or being knocked down so many times.
well, what I'm getting at is like, yes, but when I say
Like
socialization,
discouraging.
no, when I say social cycle development, it's discouraging, but it's like, what do you see, right? So I am becoming my social cycle development and my environmental growth because of how I'm being socialized, my socialization. My socialization is what I see. So what I see, me personally, let's just speak of me. When I was about, okay, when I was 5, 6, 7, 8, I personally want to be an NFL football player. That's me, personally, right? You know, I watch football on television, look at running backs. That's what I want to be. And around about 10, 11, 12, I start, you know, chasing that dream by playing offensive football. But then, you know, another vision came, you know, crack cocaine. Let's go into that area. Marijuana, you know, things of that matter. And I started walking to the store, see guys around the store, you know, give me $1, $2, you know, and start seeing guys there smoking marijuana, they're doing this, they're doing that. And eventually, you know, that's what I wanted to do. And I actually started doing it, you know. I wanted to smoke marijuana, you know. I wanted to make money. I remember seeing my own boy back in the day, he used to buy penny cookies, right? Penny cookies, get $1, go buy 100 cookies, you know. And then after a while, like a year later, you see he got a Chevy with 50s and cuts on it with boom in it. Like, wow, how you do that with a mouthful of gold? I'm like, wow, how did he do that? And then I'm looking, and I'm like, I want to do that. Yeah, I want to do that. Brother, you remember, if anybody, you know, our age, they remember, you know, we used to say, oh, that's my car. That's my car. We always see the car and we say it's our car, right? You know what I mean? So what I'm getting at is that our socialization, our social development, sometimes it socializes us and it takes us into a different route. So we were so innocent as a child, and then our socialization just changes everything, you know, and not everyone. Right, but not everyone, you know, because if you take 10 kids, if you take 10 kids out of the hood, let's say it's like a 20% success ratio, you know, especially in my area, in my era, you know, eight of them, eight's gonna, whatever, if you want to call it a failure, whatever you want to call it, you know what I mean? Um, or you want to call it just can't get it right at that moment, you know, because I had to go through what I had to go through in order to get to where I'm at today. And I heard this saying, the hardest thing to change is your old habits. The hardest thing to change is relearning the things that you have learned. And we learned a lot of bad habits, and the hardest thing to do is unlearn them.
Just make a decision and cut it off.
Well, I mean, if it's something that you have been doing for years, you know, it's you know, and then we go into the education system. You got to remember that they're teaching in the education system, you know, how to become a worker, right? Not how to become an entrepreneur, not how to become a boss. They teach you how to be a worker. So the thing is that all these things in school you have to unlearn. You have to unlearn because now you're trying to build a future for yourself. And now, what I'm getting at too is that even the things in school that you had to unlearn, I had to unlearn the socialization and the social development and environmental growth of how I was socialized into, the marijuana and the crack era and these things like that. I had to unlearn because it's hard to break old habits.
So with that unlearning, did you have to let go of some of the people in your network and build a new network?
Well, I mean, that's the best thing to do, you know. Um, yes, I did. Of course. I mean, when you're dealing like that, you have to create new allies because you have to create allies into the things that you're doing. Now I'm an author, you know, teaching financial literacy. So now I have to build allies in them areas, you know, the areas that I had allies in when I was coming up, the same. Everybody's not going to make it. Everybody's not going with you, no matter if they're an old friend, a good friend, the best friend, Right now, when you're building allies, you're building like you said earlier, like a team. You're building like a circle, and within this circle, there have to be people who are going the same way that you're going. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Sometimes too, even though you don't need those allies and resources anymore, you hold on to them. Like emergency, just in case.
No, you never build a
one
wall.
foot in, 1 foot out. Like
No,
just in case
no,
I need to go back to that.
no, going back. No, going back. But you never build walls, because building walls sometimes build enemies. You want to build. You want to keep the bridge. You want to keep building bridges. But in some relationships, you may want to build a wall because in some relationships are not worth it. Some relationships are just not worth it. You know what I mean? Um, Old friends that may not have your best interests at heart. Female friends who might not have your best interests at heart. It's just certain people, like the saying say that everybody's not going where you're going. So when we're saying bridges, we're meaning like if you're dealing with business, we meaning like keeping your resources, you're building resources. So if you're building bridges, you're being able to actually build resources. You're looking for not only your asset, but you're looking for others that are assets also. You know, if you have somebody in your bid, if you're building bridges, you want somebody that's an asset in your business. You don't want to build walls. You want to continue to build bridges. And if you don't build bridges, then your resources they become limited. But there's some time that walls, are necessities. They are necessary. It depends on, because you might not want to go back to, who you used to be. Ain't no may, ain't no may. I'm not going back to who I used to be. You know what I mean? Because I'm looking to. I know my past, and because I know my past, I know my future. But I'm looking towards the present and the future, not the past. Tell us about your architecture of your bridge.
Architecture.
Yes.
I remember taking a class like that. Having us do the six, eight bridges and stuff. But I don't know much about architecture. But the way I visualize it, like I said in scripture, it says one part, many members.
Right.
So it takes, just like a car, it takes all those pieces to create one thing.
Right.
Right. That's successful.
Right.
And that's how I vision it when you said bridge.
And all them pieces are just your resources. All them pieces are just your allies. All the pieces are the things that make that bridge work, right? But my thing is, I'm using the bridge to go over. You know what I mean? I'm using the bridge to go over. And the bridge is you know, my relationships that I'm, within whatever I'm dealing with. Right now we're dealing with financial literacy or whatever business that I'm dealing with. I'm looking for to build allies and not walls.
Mhm. And not just for you to go over, right?
Right,
For other people over as well.
right, right, right. Still dealing with the 4th of July, even though this is the day after 4th of July, we still dealing with the 4th of July. And we want to, like I said, we want to build bridges, not walls. And we're gonna say this here in closing. Remember, life is a process with ups and downs. Keep learning, keep building, keep believing. Your past closed, and your past doesn't have to determine your future.
Thank you for watching and joining.
Assets over liability. Assets over liability. This is Billionaire Baby. Mind your business Sunday.